Welcome to the Drip Tray Diaries, a podcast about real pub life from behind the bar to behind the scenes. We're talking the laughs, the long days and the late nights. The stories that you only ever hear in a pub. Along the way, we sit down with people from across the industry, sharing experiences, opinions and stories from their life in hospitality. So, pull up a chair, grab yourself a drink, and let's get into today's episode of the Drip Tray Diaries. Welcome to another episode of the Drip Tray Diaries. Today is our first episode with a guest. We are joined by Paul, who is better known to me as Dad, and Elliot.
As
Unfortunately, Gracie has dropped out this morning as since turning 18 a week ago, she has discovered alcohol and
its
late nights.
consequences.
And, yeah, the consequences are racking up. So she'll not be joining us today, but that makes it easier with the 3 microphones, as my 4th microphone failed to turn up yesterday. So, what are we going to talk about this week?
Paul,
yeah, mostly Paul, I suppose.
Talk about pub trade in his time, pub trade now, and what the differences are. All sorts. We have many questions lined up.
Okay, well, I'll start off by telling you that I first ended up in a pub when I was about 4 years old. My dad bought a pub in South East London in Greenwich called the Prince Albert. How about that? I even remember the name. And that was in the early 1960s. So things were rapidly changing then. As you're probably sort of semi-aware, there was things like the Beatles coming out and there was hippies and culture was changing. And it was an exciting time. Not that I remember it that well at 4 years old, but 4, 5, 6. But it was everything was changing, and pubs were no different. At that stage, we had very similar lineup to what you got. There were no draft lagers. The only lager we had was usually Holston Pills in bottles, and that was the only lager. There was no lager on pump. Everybody was drinking the draft ales. The brewers had bought out keg beers, as they called them, but they were mainly, most of the people, certainly in South London, used to drink either brown and mild, which was a brown ale in a bottle, so you had half a pint of mild and they poured the brown ale in, or a light and bitter, they used to call it, which was half of a bitter, a real ale, and then they would pour in a bottle of light ale, and that gave them their pint. So they were the major things.
Was there any particular reason for them doing that? Or was it?
One of the reasons, I think, was they all thought they was going to get a little bit more because we didn't have metered pumps and things in those days at the start. So they, you poured half a pint of beer into a glass and you sort of gauged where that was. You knew it actually used to be, believe it or not, 4 fingers up the side of the glass, and the top of your finger was a half pint in a pint glass.
Unless you had little hands.
Unless you had little hands, yeah. So you wanted barmaids with little hands. But everybody expected to get a little bit of extra beer because they poured their light ale in and they couldn't quite get it all in the glass.
So nothing's changed then?
No, they're still the same, aren't they? They're all more than they're going to pay for. So that was mainly the start, and the breweries bought out the first kegs, which are a bit more like the. In fact, we were at the Courage's pub, so they had a beer called Tavern Keg, and really that was light and bitter in a keg. So instead of doing the bitter, you could just pour. But people still like their light and bitters because they still thought they was going to get a bit more. So that was it. So that was sort of my introduction to the trade. It was like that. It was fairly straightforward. We used to have 4 or 5 pumps on the bar, and the bar went round in an oval sort of shape, so you walk round the other side. Excuse me. And there was a drip tray, but it used to be one big solid drip tray underneath all the pumps. And usually it was lead lined, believe it or not, as they say nowadays. And we had a German Shepherd because there was no health and safety rules in those days. Had a German Shepherd used to be behind the bar with us all the time, and when we went round the other side of the bar and couldn't see it, it used to lap up all of the slops out the drip pad on this side, and you'd walk round the other side of the bar and the dog would go the other way and go and have the ones from the other side of the bar. So
Was it
That
called
was-
Gracie?
No, his name was Prince, actually. There you go, always a Prince. So, yeah, that's how it all started out. And then my dad was actually the first pub in South London to put on a draft lager.
Okay.
And the lager was called Harp. It was
Harp
it was
lager.
worse than Foster's, to be honest.
That's such a London beer.
Yeah.
Just the name of it.
It was. And that was the first draft lager on the pump that we had. It became popular very quickly.
Really?
I mean, through the summer especially, because real ale's being sold at sort of 12 degrees or something. That's the sort of ideal temperature. And Harp you could sell at almost freezing. So, in the summer it was a really nice cold drink. So that was why that was done. Yeah, it was interesting, but during the 60s, the real ales then faded away, because at the end of the 60s to the early 70s, really, the real ales disappeared off the counter, and they started to put in little tiny pumps, little taps that you put your beer under, and they were driven by CO2 gas. So we still have barrels as we've got now, although we used to use much bigger ones.
Was the beer the same? Like now we've got pale ales, golds, bitters, and stouts. Was it all similar kind of cask ales, or was it?
It was similar, but I mean, in South London, it was really nearly all bitter. There was you usually used to have 2 or 3 different types of bitter. So you had a standard bitter, and then you'd have, in Courage's pubs, you'd have a director's bitter, which was like the more premium bitter. And you had mild, which you don't see very much nowadays. We used to have a dark mild on. And you didn't really have, not in London anyway, you didn't have the HPAs and things like we've got here. Well, it's not Hereford Pale Ale, is it? It's actually just a pale ale. Yeah. But we didn't have pale ales as such. They were all sort of bitters and things. But they faded out, and we went to these taps. But the barrels used to come in exactly the same into the cellar. We still had to put them up on the stillage.
Without the sort of cranes that we've got now.
Yes, no. We used to
and they were a bit bigger, I imagine.
Manhandle them. Well, I mean, most of the time now in the pubs, in nearly all the pubs, people work on 9-gallon little tiny, what we call firkins. That's what their real name is. Some of the pubs around in the towns and things that sell a bit more will use Kildekins, which are 18 gallons.
We tried those for a bit, didn't we? But
yeah,
they're a lot more difficult.
In the pubs in London, because they were busy, we used to use barrels. Barrels were 36 gallons, so they were 4 times the size of the 9s that you handle. And we used to get them in and put them up on the stillage. You still had to spile them, like we do now, which is knocking the little pin out of the top. Put a soft spile in it, as we call it, which is a piece of wood that's porous, so that the barrel can breathe. So you get like a little bit of foam comes out the top and whatever. It lets it breathe and settle, because the beer still had finings in it and things to stop it being cloudy. So everything was done the same as if we had the hand pumps, but the hand pumps disappeared. Because we were modernising, everything was modern, all the buildings were modern, we all wore flared jeans or whatever they were, or bell bottoms, and it was all
New
different.
romantics.
Yeah, it was all sort of that type of thing. So everything had to be modern, everybody wanted to see modern things. So we had these little tiny square pumps, as we called them, but they were just little taps on the counter. And then after you'd prepared the beer, you used to screw into the top of it, into the shive, that's what the bit in the top's called. Used to screw a metal bracket, basically, just screwed in. It had a sort of tapered thread on it, and you connected a gas line to that and the CO2 gas, and that was set at 36 pounds. That's per square inch. That was the pressure you used, and that just forced, as you put gas in the top of the keg, so the beer would, or in the barrel, so the beer would come out the tap at the bottom, go up the line. As you open the tap, it just let the beer out. It didn't get that much gas into the beer, but you did as it got down. So the barrel was filling with CO2, and so the bitter became slightly fizzy, a bit like you'd have
almost like a bottled beer.
Like a bottled beer you'd get nowadays. It's like if you bought a Butty back from Wye Valley in a bottle, it still tends to just have that little sort of fizz to it, rather than being dead flat as normal ales are. So that carried on for a few years, and the lagers became more popular. There was different brands. Courage's brought out a Harp Special, which was a bit stronger. It wasn't quite as weak as the original Harp. And there was lots of other lagers started to appear. So the whole thing was sort of bubbling away and was quite good. And then in the 70s, really, the campaign for Real Ale got going, this camera that we all hear about and the good beer guides. And they were beer enthusiasts, and they didn't like having the carbon dioxide on top of the bitter and pushing it. Right. They wanted to go back to traditional ales where it was pulled with the hand pumps.
So they had an issue with the fact that hand pumps were kind of being phased out.
Well, they'd gone. They disappeared. They'd all gone off the counters. And
there's quite a long gap from being gone to saying,
it was at least probably 10 years, if not getting on towards 15 years in places, that the pumps had disappeared. And because of that, the companies that manufactured the pumps had stopped manufacturing them, the hand pumps, because people didn't buy them, so they stopped manufacturing. So as camera became more popular, some pubs still had some pumps sitting out the back somewhere or something. I put them on. We didn't. Ours had disappeared. I remember my dad casting around. There was no eBay in those days and things like that. So he was casting around trying to find. He found a company that had a load of second-hand bar equipment, basically, and he found some pumps in those. So we got the pumps and put them back on the counter and reconnected them to the beer and went back to the old way of pulling, which is just a vacuum tube, basically. It goes through a pump and you just pull it. It sucks the beer out of the barrel and brings it up. And that was it. But
so it's fairly similar to today, although today we've got gas-assisted pumps which don't touch the beer. They're just a tube that goes through and a little cog turns and pushes the beer. It helps assist push the beer through.
The ones nowadays, they're like the things you see on Casualty and whatever, where they're sort of, there's a little spinning wheel with little rollers on it, and it pushes the drip stuff through people and whatever. That's basically what we've got now for beer. So that the gas doesn't ever touch the beer. It just drives the little tumblers that roll around. But it was...
So how quickly would you go through... So you go for a barrel in a similar time frame? We go through like a 9-gallon of gold, maybe 1 to 1.5 a day when it's busy. What was it when you had four times the amount? Was
the London pubs, I mean, obviously we had the footfall because it was in the big town. And we do a couple of barrels a day, a couple of 36s, and we do a mild as well, and we do a couple of lagers, and then Guinness came along, and we do a couple of Guinness. As I tell you,
was Guinness different?
Yeah, interesting fact about the Guinness was it. I mean, I know now you use, is it 70-30 gas? Isn't it we use for Guinness, and that's 70%. Is that CO2 or nitrogen? I don't know which way around it is.
I think 70% CO2, 30% nitrogen. It could be the other way around.
So it's a mixed gas. We only ever used to have CO2, but Guinness knew that to get that nice creamy pint, they wanted to put nitrogen in it. And we all just had CO2 bottles, just gas bottles. So what they did was they actually had a keg, and round the outside of the keg, it was all closed with one skin. But inside it, there were two skins. So you had the Guinness in the middle, and around the outside, they actually used to pump the gas. So the gas was in the keg, and when you connected it, you put the connector into the beer, and then a little gas pipe come off of it, and you clip that onto the gas bit. And so they used to come in with their own gas. So
it was Guinness. Like a one keg serving of gas per keg, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it'd come in and the gas wouldn't have been filled up enough, so you used to have to go and grab an empty one and still had some in it and put it next to it so you could connect it up. But I mean, it was a funny old times. It come Christmas time, we was so busy, we used to go up to what they call hogsheads, and they were 54-gallon barrels, and they are enormous, and they were really heavy. But you got a knack. You learn your stillages. I don't know if there's probably still around lots of pubs. I mean, I know we've got the special racks now, but a lot of the pubs just had really two sort of 8x4 beams going across and supported, and that's what your stillage was. You used to put your barrels up on that. They were set about 18 inches, 2 foot apart, and the barrel would just rest, and the bulge would go down between the two.
What was I can't remember what I was going to say now. 54 gallons you used to have.
Yeah, 54 gallons.
Just trying to work out what that was in. It's 245 litres.
Wow.
So you'd have one of those at Christmas.
Well, we'd have a load of those at Christmas because it was going to go quick.
Well, I did have a question. You mentioned footfall. Obviously, compared with a place like here, you have maybe less of a kind of clientele, but much more of a base of regulars. In those kind of massive pubs, obviously, we'll probably get into it a bit later, kind of your family got up to kind of looking after up to 9 pubs. With that first place, the Prince Albert, is it more the case that you're just serving an amount of people a day, or did you have kind of a base of regulars in a
very
place
much
that big?
Like here, there were lots of regulars. It was mostly regulars, really. It was a back street pub, the Prince Albert. It was the first one. Was a back street pub, but obviously, there was thousands of houses around us, and culture has changed immensely. We used to do probably most of our trade between 5 and 9.
Kind of the after work pint.
Yeah, people used to come in almost every night after work and have a drink. And then obviously at weekends it would be even busier. As a small funny story, just made me laugh. My dad bought another pub called the Angerstein, which was even bigger. It was a big gin palace place that you see in London.
We spoke about that last week, and the hauntings on Christmas Eve.
Yes.
Where your gas used to go off.
It was a really high ceilings, enormous bar. Took a load of people.
It's still going, isn't it?
Oh, it's still going. But people used to come out as the money got tight. We had lots of recessions through my life, and as the money got tight, people stopped coming out quite so early. But they still came out. But they, instead of coming out at 7 or 8 o'clock, they were coming out at 9 o'clock. The pub was shut at 11. My daddy, bless him, he was a good businessman, and he used to get really quite annoyed that they were sort of trying to take all the money in the last 2 hours. So on a Friday and Saturday night, he used to take half the chairs out of the pub and put them out in the backyard. And it made people come out earlier to get a chair.
Okay.
Because if they got in there at 9 o'clock, there was no chairs left. So
market manipulation.
We should try that.
It just worked.
Fly around.
It worked really, really well. People started coming out earlier and earlier to make sure they got a chair. So he was quite clever with that sort of thing. I mean, the other thing we had in most of the old pubs had cellars underground. They were all down, proper cellars, as it were. And they used to deliver the barrels in those days. And I mean, now you see them with these great big sort of pads made of foam, and they sort of drop the beer on them and things. But
which can still go wrong, as I learned when I was helping I was standing there and saying, well, you drop them on the mat and roll them over to me and I'll take them into the cellar. And he dropped it on the edge of the mat. And I think it was a Guinness keg, came flying at me at about 20 miles an hour.
Yeah. Well, they used to, I mean, we had more health and safety at the start, I think. It's strange that, isn't it? There was a point in time where it just became busy and everything sort of got different. But initially they used to put on the forecourt of the pub, there was a big hole with a cover over it. You took the cover off and you used to drop a post down it of oak that was about, I'd say it was probably 6-8 inches square post going up, and it went about 3 or 4 foot high. And at the top it had a piece of metal drilled through it like a T. And they used to put the barrels and the hogsheads and things to the edge of the flaps that went down into the cellar. And then they'd put a rope on them, and then they'd wind the rope round this post and over the metal bit.
Yeah.
And then there'd be 2 of them. There's always 2 in those days. And they pushed the barrel over the edge, and then there was it looked like a ladder. We used to call it a pulley. And it was just 2 rails, wooden bars going down, just separated with metal rungs almost. And they'd put the barrel on that, and the bloke at the top would just lower it down with the rope. He'd just use the rope, and that would go around the post, and they'd lower it down. And then I'd be in the cellar at the bottom, and I'd just unhook it and roll the barrel away, and they'd pull the rope up and do the next one. And that's how they used to do it. Well, obviously, somebody at the brewery decided that was too slow. So they then developed these big, thick pads they had in those days, because you're talking about throwing these barrels 12 foot down a hole, really. So they put these huge, big pads down. Some of them were just like sacking with corks and things inside, but they developed into the foam ones. And they used to put that at the bottom of the cellar flaps, and they just used to push it over the edge. And the barrel would hit it and bounce, and come flying towards you in the cellar at about 100 miles an hour. I mean, it was really... But so we used to put a couple of full barrels in front of the hole so that it hit them first, and that took all the...
What's that? Those little ball bearings.
Yeah, it was almost,
like that.
but it took all the force out of it, and then you
The
could
empty
roll
barrel
it out
comes
the way.
flying at you at the end.
But I mean, things have changed enormously. I mean, that pub, come Christmas time, we'd have, I don't know, 20 hogsheads delivered for the Christmas week, plus all the other kegs and that as well. And we'd have still doing the bottled beers. And we used to have 120 dozen light ales delivered. We'd have sort of 30 dozen, 40 dozen brown ales delivered. And there was Guinness, and there was others. Mackinson was a stout that everybody used to drink.
Was Guinness, actually, that was what I was going to ask and I just forgot. Was it still a 2-part pour? We've got the sort of theatrical of it now with the 119.5 second settle.
45-degree angle, perfectly bringing up for the golden harp, yeah.
Yes, is the answer. They've always been
difficult.
It's always been a nuisance. It's and this is for anybody out there who comes in with people that have got Guinness, please order your Guinness first.
Yeah, we would. You get done with 9 drinks, and the last one is we'll just stare at each other for a minute and a half.
It's more awkward for them, to be honest. We're used to it now.
Yeah, but we just walk away, don't we? Now we just pour it and walk away. But yeah, no, it's
and
been,
also, if there is a Guinness on the bar and it is missing the top kind of inch and a half, it's not finished yet. Please don't take it away. We're letting it settle. Yeah, that's happened to me probably about 10 or so times.
I keep it on the.
It's normal. It's more when I've got multiple Guinnesses, so I'll put one on the bar to do the next one, and they'll just take it, and I'm like, no, I'm not
really
finished
thirsty
yet.
there.
I mean, we could get away with it. We'd make a bit more profit off it then, but.
No, so I mean, there was interesting times, but things haven't changed completely out of line. The shives, which is the bit in the top of the barrel that you punched a hole in, they was always wooden in the early days.
Okay.
The keystones, which is the bit that you bang the tap into, that was wooden as well.
We had 2 at the beer festival this year. I think it was Theakston's.
It was the Otter Brewery, I thought.
Oh, Otter Brewery had
the old school barrels as well.
Yeah, they had the plastic, not plastic, wooden shives and keystones.
But they were good. But I mean, if you hit the tap a little bit too hard, it used to split the keystone.
In fact, actually, we was all taking the mick out of Gracie last week for tapping a barrel without spiling it, and then that's exactly what I did last night, and I got soaked.
What happened? What went off last night?
Gold. And I just assumed it was spiraled and went bang.
Well, funny you should say that, because I was thinking to myself, we used to clean the lines totally differently to what you do, because there was no... I mean, here, that you go from a large pipe, half-inch, three-quarter-inch pipe from your house, and it goes into a stupid little 9 or 10 mil pipe, doesn't it? And that comes from the cellar to the bar, and then it goes back to a three-quarter-inch or half-inch pipe to go on the pump. So it's a funny system we got now. But in those days, of course, the pipe just used to come from the pump.
And there's lots of joints as well.
Yeah, ours used to just go straight down through the floor and straight into the cellar, and then hook straight up to the barrel. So it was just a half-inch or three-quarter-inch pipe all the way through. And we didn't have all the chemicals that we use now. So what we used to do was we used to open the tap at the top and shove a foam pellet. We used to call them pellets as well. They were about an inch long, and they were quite about probably half-inch wide, if not a bit wider, and certainly wider than the pipe. And the idea was we used to shove that in, and then we used to put what they called a stirrup pump, which was a pump that you put your foot on to hold it upright, and the other end, it was like a U shape. The other end of the U went in a bucket of water. And then we'd put a hose from that onto the tap, and then pump the stirrup pump. And the pressure of that going through would force the pellet up through the pipe and down into it. You put the other end in a bucket in the cellar, and it would force it into the bucket in the cellar. And what you had to do is you had to count how many pellets you put through, and then go down and make sure you got that many pellets in the bucket.
Oh, so it was from the bar to the cellar?
Yeah.
Rather than now it's from the cellar to the bar?
Yeah, you used to do it the other way around. You used to do it backwards. And we've done that in all the pipes, even through the coolers, the lagers and everything else. You used to all get pellets through. And occasionally you get a pellet stuck in the bloody cooler and that drive you nuts. You spend hours trying to get it out. But it was a totally different way of working with these sort of pellets and sending them through. I've lost the thread of where I was going to be with that, but it was an interesting way, and it cleaned the pipes really efficiently because, as you know, what happens is that the beer lays in the pipes while you're waiting to pour the next one, and any yeast that's in the beer settles to the bottom of the pipe. So you end up with yeast in the pipes. That's why it's so important to clean the pipes regularly.
I mean, we've had a couple of issues with our lines before, and we've actually learned that there's some terrible beer line cleaners, some that are just bad batches. We've had a couple of bad batches of one of the purple ones. So we've cleaned the lines regularly like we always do, and then it's starting to go a bit weird and not working properly, and then upon investigating the pipes you find there's a bit of yeast in there. You can sort of see it from the cooler. We've also got more joints, I'd imagine, because there's joints in. What's changed in the cellar from, like, if you go into our cellar now, you've got the keg coupler, goes up to a buoy with the little ball inside, and then out of that to the cooler, and then connects to a different line in the cooler, and then changes pipe again to a different pipe coming out of the cooler, and then it splits off into the bar. So there's kind of 3 or 4 points that you can get kind of a little lip that helps.
The old kegs, so the lagers and the keg beers that you was still went through the cooler, you had similar. I mean, the lines tended to be a bit fatter than they are now. Anyway, the pipes inside the cooler were fatter than they are now. So it was a little bit sort of easy. You could still push a pellet through them. But you had a joint into the cooler, a joint out of the cooler, and that was it really. One at the keg and one at the tap in the bar. So you didn't have many joints in that sense. Well, what I was going to say was we used to take the pipes off to clean them, obviously. So you'd have a full barrel. And what you're supposed to do, that was always taught you should do, was you turn the gas off at the top, you undo the gas spiral, you undo a little bit and let all the CO2 out. I mean, they go mad now letting the CO2 out into a cellar. But you used to let all the CO2 out and take the pressure off. So then you used to turn the tap off for the beer, undo the pipe and put it in the bucket ready to do the spirals. But because you get a little bit cocky over the years, you've been doing it for a while and you think, I don't want to waste all that gas. So you just turn the tap off, undo the beer pipe and put it in the bucket. And you just leave the gas in the barrel, it stays there, it's not a problem. Great. Except if you have any problems. And I was cleaning the beer lines one day, as you saying about the getting soaked with sparling. I was cleaning the beer lines and I literally touched the beer line. I used to have a spanner to undo the beer lines. I touched the spanner to this thing and the whole tap blew out the front of this barrel with 36 pounds pressure behind it. And a stream of beer come out under 36 pounds, gas still going in the top because I hadn't turned it off. And it blew me across the cellar, stood me against the wall, and I was just being hit by this huge spurt of beer, which soaked me from head to toe. I was completely drenched, and I had to walk forward into this stream and put my hand over the thing and reach up and turn the gas off and let the gas out. And then I put the tap back in. I'd lost about 5 gallons of beer, I think, and most of it was on my clothes. And the worst of all was that I was working in a pub that I didn't live at, so I had no spare clothes. And luckily it was early in the morning, I was changing the beer line. So I went upstairs in this pub to the kitchen and I took all my clothes off and rinsed them all out in the sink, sort of washed them all out. And you remember this is a long time ago, we didn't have all the modern facilities we got nowadays. So there was no tumble dryer or anything. So I got them and hung them over a chair and opened the oven door and put the oven on, and that sort of to dry the clothes. And I'm standing there in a pair of pants, soaking bloody wet still, and I sort of washed my body down as best I could. And I'm waiting, and I had to wait about an hour or so, and the clothes were sort of dry. When I took my trousers off the back of this chair, they stood up on their own. They got so starchy and so stiff with all this beer. And for the whole day, I was walking around in these crunchy clothes every time I moved. They were just crunching.
No, yeah. It's handy having a change of wardrobe.
You didn't have all the modern kit. What about things like glass washers? You wouldn't have had those.
No glass washers at all.
So
it was a sink behind the bar, hot soapy water, and I've got to be honest, when I think back to it, it wasn't that brilliant. We used to just sort of plunge them in and sort of go up and down with them about 4 times and put them on the draining board. That was washed.
Yeah.
That was it. It was soapy water, so I mean, it had detergent in it. It should kill any germs. And then a tea towel, obviously, to polish the glasses and put them back on the shelves. So no glass washers. We didn't.
I know she, in some ways, was probably a bit quicker than nowadays. Because nowadays you've got a rack, you kind of fill it up. Once you've got 15, 20 glasses in there, you put it through for 2 minutes, and then they're piping hot, and you've got to let them cool down. And
it wasn't. But I mean, more than anything else, Ash, when you stop, it was that pubs were so much busier. So
you had so many more glasses.
Would be constantly washing up. I mean, that's all you done. You was behind the bar and you was chatting to people while you were washing the glasses because you just had hundreds of them. It's the pub change has changed. I feel really sorry for the youngsters today because they say that the millennials and that don't drink. Well, pubs are not necessarily. I mean, I know Gracie, for instance, isn't in this morning because of the alcohol, but pubs sell non-alcohol stuff. They sell loads of soft drinks, but it's the social side of the pub that's so important, and they miss that. And I think, it's to do with phones and all the modern technology and things, but I think nothing like having a game of darts with somebody or a game of pool and a chat with the lads and the girls on a Friday night. And I think they're missing that. There used to be, we used to have the pubs used to have a pianist in on a Friday and Saturday night. I mean, I know it was London, but I mean, we'd done it when we was in Hastings as well. And everybody in the pub would be singing songs and cheering and singing together, and it was a really nice place to be.
I was going to say, it's kind of a different need than this place. As in here, without kind of a community like the pub, you wouldn't see anyone, whereas in London, it's that busy anyway, but for people to actually get to know each other, something like the Prince Albert is kind of essential, isn't it? Otherwise, you just spend your whole life, work, home, sleep, repeat, basically.
I think so. I mean, the pubs in London, I mean, living in London is a strange place. You often didn't know the name of your next door neighbour. You might sort of say hello in the morning or something as you went out the door. But there were so many people. It was actually sounds strange, but it was more difficult to make friends in that area than it was if you're living in a rural area, because you see the same people so regularly in a rural area. But I think it's the pub was the place to be. You met people and you joined the darts team or you joined the pool team, and that made you a part of something, and you started to meet other people. So I think, I don't know, I hope that in my lifetime I see the pubs survive because of all the pressures that are on them, and that the youngsters realise the benefit of it. They can still sit in the pub with their phone. We're not one of these pubs that tells people to turn their phones off.
And we've got free Wi-Fi.
And we've got
very quick Wi-Fi now. We've got the Starlink set up. But I think one of the things I was always we'd go to pubs back down in Kent, but I wouldn't go often. And I was always associate a pub with a place where there's just a load of old blokes drinking. And it was almost intimidating to go to a pub, but until I went to a pub. And then I was like, it's not so bad, actually. This is quite good. And you don't, quite often I wouldn't drink because I'd be driving everyone there. I don't really drink anyway, which is actually quite a funny thing because you don't drink really at all, do you? And I don't really drink much. I'll drink to play darts because otherwise I am completely useless. But a lot of people are surprised by that because I think a lot of people assume if you're a landlord, you're a pisshead, basically. But I think you either are or you're the opposite.
No, generally speaking, in my experience of pubs over the years, landlords are either alcoholics or they're teetotal.
Yeah.
There's very much, not much in between that. They don't. I mean, I have the occasional social drink. I had one Christmas morning. Someone bought me a drink and I had a drink. But, I mean, it's not... I don't dislike alcohol. It's just that you're around it all the time. It's a bit like being in the kitchen as a chef or anything. You're around the food all day, and when it comes time for dinner, you look at all the
pizza
food
or something.
I don't really fancy anything. I mean, I've been cooking that all day. And beer and alcohol is the same, I think. I think if you're around it all day, every day, you don't fancy it.
It's weird, guys. I don't have that problem.
I have
no idea what you're talking about. No, it was bring on. So at its kind of height, your family that owned or looked after 9 different pubs at one point. Did you have a particular favourite amongst them? I mean, because you were working in the pubs from when you could walk, you were pretty much
Well, yeah,
in
I
their
mean,
given
I used to. I think the Angusteen was probably my favourite.
Okay.
I grew up there the most. We were there for the longest period.
Did you live at the Angusteen?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I mean, it had a 16-room hotel above it, so we used to sort of live there, and yeah, I mean, like now, I think. I'm waiting for my grandson to sort of grow up and start to do things. But we had a pub in Woolwich Market Square that my mum used to run the most. And I used to go because there was no sort of childcare really like there is now in that sense. So I got put in school quite early. I was quite a young, sort of into nursery school and things, because it got you out of the way so they could get on with running the pub. But obviously you come home and I learnt very quickly to change barrels, to tap barrels, to spile barrels. By 10 years old, I could more or less run a cellar, 10 or 11 years old. And I used to go with my mum on a Friday and Saturday night because she didn't know what else to do with me to the pub. And they had a little tiny, what you used to call an office, but it was about 6 foot square room behind the bar. And I used to more or less sit in there, really, most of the night. And Mum would come out and just say to me, can you go and change the lager? The lager's gone off, or can you go and do this? And I'd go down and change the beer and come back up again. But yeah, I think the Angusteen was my favourite. It was a really nice pub. It was a very busy pub.
Did you own the Angusteen, or was it a brewery?
It was a brewery tenanted pub. That's quite a... I mean, nearly all the pubs going back... sort of 50 years ago, were really all owned by the breweries.
Okay.
There were, I mean, even this pub, if you go out the front, we've still got the plaque on the wall that says owned sort of Best in the West, which was a brewery company that owned all the pubs around this area. You see these plaques all over Leinster and all around this area, and in Gloucester. I think it was a Gloucester brewery, wasn't it? So nearly all the pubs, there was hardly any free houses. And the free houses only started coming about when the pub companies sold off pubs they couldn't make work, and they just sold them off to get rid of them. So it was nearly everything was brewery owned. So we had what they call tenancies, where you buy everything in the pub except the building, basically. So you buy all the tables, chairs, carpets, light fittings, everything like that, and you take the pub over. That's what the original tenancies were like.
Was there a difference, like if you compare it to modern day? I mean, we see it all the time when the publicans group we're on, where like we'll buy a barrel of Carlin for say 120 quid, 130 quid, whatever it is, but on a tenanted pub they'd be paying 230, 240, 250 pounds for the same barrel. Was it the same kind of thing back in the day? It was.
You were tied. You had to buy, and in fact you were tied probably slightly. I don't know what they're like nowadays because we haven't got any tenancies, but you used to have to buy your beer, your wine, your spirits, everything from the brewery. Everything had to come through them, and it all had a premium price. But again, things have changed so much. I mean, if you come in here now even the trading standards people, we had them in when we first opened, if you remember. Yeah. They come round and they have, don't understand what they do, but they have like little litmus papers, and they ask for Smirnoff vodka and whatever. And you line it up on the counter and they dip these litmus papers in, and that tells them whether it's proper original Smirnoff vodka.
Oh,
because
not watered down or...
Yeah, well, not watered down, right specific gravity, but also that it is a premium product. It's
fake.
From Smirnoff, it's not fake. Because back in the old days, because the Courages, for instance, used to sell you all the spirits, they used to also do their own brand spirits. So they had... Like where we sell bells, they used to sell a spirit called Queen Anne. And Queen Anne was the same colour and flavour as bells.
Right.
So because you were paying so much for a bottle of bells, what the publicans used to do, and I know it's totally wrong in today's society, but in those days that's what went on, you used to get a bottle of bells and you'd put the bottle of bells on the optic and then you'd get it down every night and top it up with Queen Anne. So you'd fill the bottle back up with Queen Anne. So what you were actually selling was Queen Anne. Because in those days everybody smoked. So about every 6-8 weeks you had to buy another bottle of bells because the label had gone so yellow you couldn't see it from the nicotine floating around.
Bloody hell.
But it was like that, that they had another whiskey called Bonnie Charlie, which was the same colour as Teachers. They specifically made their own brands to match. There was Squire's gin instead of Gordon's gin. You know, they had Cornhill, another gin which was a sort of yellowy colour, because there was another Booth's gin was famous at the time, which was a yellowy gin. So, you know, they actually purposely made their own brands to look like it. But yeah, if you had a free house, you were really lucky. But to be honest, you weren't paying hugely less in the free houses in the old days, because there wasn't many of them about. So, you know, there was no wholesalers, there was nobody trying to get your business, really.
Because we can sort of pick and choose. We'll battle for pennies.
Yeah, we do.
Pounds or for
keep the price down as best we can.
Keep it as cheap for the customers as possible. Yeah. We can do that much easier than anyone else, because that's tied, because they can't. They're just fixed. And quite often, from what I gather, if they're tied into a company, say they're with Punch Taverns, they pay £208 for a keg of Carling, and then they say you have to sell that for £4.50. You can't sell it for more. So they're working on a smaller GP as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure they control all of the selling price, but they, you know, obviously they've got to be competitive. Otherwise, everybody won't go to them. So they have to try and be competitive. I mean, it's the old story, isn't it? I get quite a lot of people I hear and I see on Facebook going on about like Wetherspoons doing 199 hours and things. And it's back to the old days. We used to call it sort of the Woolworths thing when Woolworths was around, because it was pile it high, sell it cheap. And if you're in a little country pub like this one, you sell, like you said, if you really had a really busy time, you'll sell 72 pints of gold. So you'll do one a day, and you sold your other beers as well. But, you know, what are you going to sell? 150 pints maximum, probably, on a good day. You go back to the Angosteen, we were selling, 1,000 pints a day. Yeah. If you out of all the barrels and beers that we had, you know, you were selling so much.
And it's the same kind of thing for Wetherspoons.
Yeah. And Wetherspoons is the same. If you look at Wetherspoons, they're always in a town. You never see a rural Wetherspoons, not unless it's at an airport or a services or something. They only go into towns, and they go to the big towns. And because they're so cheap, they attract a load of trade from that town. Yeah. So it's all
they've got their place, I think.
I think they have. I think they've got their place. They've got a good model, and it works. It works for them. Unfortunately, you know, you then get compared with that when you're in a pub in the middle of nowhere with a footfall that's 1/10th, if not much less than that, probably 1/20th or 1/30th of it. So,
and I assume they could potentially negotiate on. They'll negotiate on everything.
Yeah,
gas,
their electric prices are cheaper, their gas is cheaper, because they're negotiating nationwide for one go. Everything is cheaper for them. The only thing that they have the same as us probably is the wage bills. So, you know, they never used to have that until the minimum wage come in, because they used to sort of pay quite cheap wages. So it's pushed their costs up enormously. I was reading about them the other day. There's sort of millions they're paying extra in NI contributions and things. So, you know,
which is a huge problem for all pubs. I mean, throughout, you've been through many recessions in pubs you were in and just in your lifetime, and now it feels like we're in another challenging period of time where the government really isn't helping this time. It's not just the kind of economy in general. The government really seem to be hounding all businesses, not just pubs, but coffee shops and high street shops.
It's all small businesses. I mean, I've got to say, and you know I am pretty political, so I can't really say I'm not, but this is the worst government with the worst effect that I've ever known in my lifetime in such a short time.
I mean, we've noticed it just in the last 18 months.
Yeah, well, it's just all happened in the last 18 months. And we've had to put the prices up. We've had to really sort of try and scale back a bit on wage bills, and we're trying to do things because if we want to survive, that's what we've got to do. It's the worst government that I've ever known for the way it's attacked the small businesses. They seem to think that we're a golden goose, and if they keep squeezing us, we'll keep laying golden eggs.
It's just not the case.
But actually, it's not. What's happened is the eggs are not coming out anymore. They've strangled the golden goose.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think they really have, and it's having an effect they're not getting as much money as they thought they was going to get because people just haven't got the money anymore.
And people are not coming out as much. I mean, we've noticed a huge reduction in our lunchtime trade.
Well, I was going to ask, so obviously all these places we're talking about now, and you four of you take this place on in 2021. For you, kind of that gap of nearly 30 years between you running the pubs originally, then glazing, all the other things, then coming back to the trade, is that the biggest difference you've noticed in that time span? We've touched on a few things like the footfall or just the way it's set up, but would you say just the environment you're kind of currently doing it in is the biggest difference now? Or
yes, when we first opened, everybody thought we were mad buying a pub at the end of COVID and everything. We actually thought it was a good opportunity because you can open up with everybody else. Nobody's been going for 2 years before you, sort of thing. So I always felt there was a good opportunity to it. But there is a difference. There's a major difference in the way that youngsters view the pub. So you don't get so many people out, as I've already said. And the footfall isn't as high as it used to be. People just don't come in after work and have a couple of pints and go home. And we've noticed just recently that some of our better sort of regulars, as you would say, don't come in as much and they don't spend as much. And that's because they haven't got any money. And because a lot of them run their own business and they're being clobbered the same way because their wages have gone up, their national insurance has gone up, everything else is going up. So they've got less money to spend, so they don't spend it in here, and then that hits us from that side. And then you've got the national insurance contributions. The biggest threat that we're facing at the moment is the rates bill. I don't know if people are aware of how rates work, but you get a rateable value, and the rateable value on this pub when we bought it was £3,500. And then they multiply that by the local rate multiplier, whatever your business multiplier is, which was 49 pence in the pound. So basically it's 50%. So your 3,500 would turn into a rate bill of 1750. But because we're the last rural pub in the sort of hamlet and the area, they give you what's called rural business rate relief. So if you're the last shop, last petrol garage, last pub, whatever, you get this rural business rates. And so actually since we've been here, our rates have been zero, which has been great. That's good. And we took that into account when we bought the pub. There's a limit on rural business rates relief. So as long as your rateable value is below £12,500, they will give you the relief. And if your rates are low enough, you won't pay any rates. If your rates are sort of getting near the 12.5, you might pay 10% of them or something. But what this government's done is they've asked for the valuations office, which they're disbanding, to revalue everybody, all the businesses, all the pubs, cafes, little shops, everybody else. And our rateable value has gone from 3,500 to 15,000, which is an incredible, amount to go up. And also it's taken us out of the small business rates relief because we're now above the 12,500. So they put the rates up, but they haven't put the rural business rates relief limit up. Yeah. They've left that where it is. And I think it's intentional. It's intentional to stop you getting the business rate relief. Now, they have promised, I'm honest, they have promised that this first year no one's going to pay more than 15% more. They're going to give us a sort of rebate or whatever. But it's for 1 year. So you've got pubs that are sitting there that are on the brink, to be honest. I mean, we're not on the brink, but pubs that are on the brink of closing down because they can't make any money. And they're going to get the relief next year. So if they really, really struggle for a year, they can probably get through. They can just about get through this year. But why bother? Yeah. And that's what I'm seeing on all the pub forums, is why bother struggling for another bloody year when in a year's time, I've got to start paying £6,000 a year rates. And to pay £6,000 a year rates, you've got to put your turnover up by about £24,000 because you've got extra staff to take the extra money. You've got the NI on that to pay and all the other things you have to pay, the holiday pay.
Stock.
And the extra stock and everything else. So you've got to take about another £24,000 a year. We've got to take £2,000 a month more to pay those rates. Where are we going to find that? How are we
when everyone's cutting back?
When everybody's cutting back and trade has dropped because everybody's cutting back, suddenly we've got to try and find another £2,000 a month. You can't do it. And I think that's what the government have misunderstood. And that's why so many little cafes, little shops...
Butcher. I've seen, I don't
butchers.
know why, but my feed on Facebook has been, I've seen about 7 butchers in the last week come out and announce that they're closing at the start of this year. They're selling off their Christmas stock and then they're shutting because they can't see a future, because people are spending less money and they're not coming in, there's less meat being sold. I don't know if that's vegetarian, vegan rising up, or whether it's actually just because people can't afford meat because it's expensive and their costs are going up and they just can't see a future. So again, they're just choosing to close. And I think it's also has another effect, which is where we were, 6 months ago, looking at potentially taking on another site and having another pub to run. And that's rateable value's gone up to 40-something thousand, and we pulled away from that, and we've just sort of looked around and gone, well, nowhere's really worth going for at the moment because it's just going to be too expensive.
Yeah, I think we've got to wait until the voters get this government out and get somebody in with a bit of sense. You know, the government needs money. I appreciate that. They need money to run the country. There's no two ways about it, and that means taxes for us all. But you need someone with a bit of common sense who sees that by putting that tax up to that much, you're actually reducing how much you're going to get in, because all these people close down. You know, last quarter for a small pub, we paid £11,000 VAT, which we have to find. I know the answer is it's supposed to be on the beer, and I hear all these other publicans, these big town pubs going, well, you should put it away every week and that. Well, that's great. If you've got a load of real positive cash flow, you can put it away every week. If you're in a normal pub and you've got this bill coming in and suddenly your fryer's broken down, or your cellar needs a new cooler or whatever, you're borrowing money from the VAT money to pay for that, and it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. And suddenly at the end of the course, you've got to find £11,000 to pay the VAT man. If we're not here because we close down, the VAT man is going to lose that £44,000 every year. And plus the NIC and all the other things and the tax from your wages and everybody else's money, they're going to lose all of that. So, you know, it's a stupid thing. And not only that, but if we do close down and you're made out of work and we're made out of work, we're all going to claim benefits because we haven't got a job, you know, and there's costing as well. So they've completely gone the wrong way with it. And we need somebody in with a bit of sense who says, well, let's get the businesses working, let's get them expanding, let's get them taking people on. And then we can reap the benefits of taking that tax in. And a lot of people will say, well, if you don't open, people will go elsewhere. Well, will they? People that live here have got to drive another 5 miles to get to another pub.
Yeah.
So even if they do go to another pub, not going to go as frequently as they come here. So they're not going to get the £11,000 back. They might get half of it. They might get 5,000 of it because people still go out and drink. But, you know, they're going to lose money. Whatever happens, they're going to lose money. Still, that's depressing. I hate depressing stories. I'll tell you a little story because I do think it's important to have a little bit of laughter in with it. Is in the first pub we had at the Prince Albert, upstairs on the first floor, it had a sort of meeting hall, and the Buffaloes used to use it. They were sort of Freemasonry type thing, but they were just the Buffaloes. And my dad started sort of letting it out for things like weddings, and we're going back, this is back in the 60s, so there was no posh stuff. A wedding, you got some sandwiches and maybe some sausage rolls or something on the table at the end.
So it should be.
Yeah, so he was getting a wedding party, had booked it, and it was, I don't know, 60 people or something. So my dad was standing upstairs making sandwiches. I mean, none of this clean thing, all the health people nowadays. He had an old trestle table in front of him with a tablecloth on it, and he was making sandwiches. And he was buttering the bread, and he's standing there making all his sandwiches. And there was a window in front of him, a sash window. It was a hot summer's day, so he had the window open. Unfortunately, pubs in those days, the toilets used to be outside. They used to literally be outside, no roofs or anything. And in the sort of 50s, 60s, to make it a bit nicer, they put these tin roofs on them, like just the corrugated tin roofs. So outside of this window was a tin roof, and there was the gents' toilet underneath. And we had a customer come in who I think the only way I describe him, you'd say nowadays, was a little bit touched. Okay. He wasn't quite all there, you know. And he used to come in and drink, and he was a nice enough guy, but he was a bit strange.
Right.
And he'd go out in the toilet, and you'd hear him as he walk around the pub. He'd sort of suddenly go, from a jack to a king. And that was the only bit of the song he knew. And he used to stop, and then he'd walk on a bit, and then a bit later you'd hear him go, from a jack to a king. So my dad's making sandwiches. He hears the door go into the toilets downstairs, and he hears this bloke go, from a jack to a king. So he goes, oh, that's old Ben O'Hara, the bloke's name was. He said, I know who that is. And then, as I say, the bloke was a bit touched. So he's down there, and he hears him go, get up off the floor. I'm going to kick you to death. And my dad knew there was no one else in there. The bloke was just like twisted. And he go, oh, God damn it, from a jack to a king, he used to go. So my dad leaned out the window and over this roof, and he went, Ben O'Hara. And he heard, God damn it, jack to a king, jack to a king. I said, Ben O'Hara, this is the angels calling you. We want you up here with us. And there was this noise of a crash of the door. And my dad flew down the stairs. And when he got down the stairs, the barman behind the bar was Des. And he said, Des, you see Ben? He said he came out the toilets. He was as white as a sheet and shot out the door. He's left half a pint on the counter.
Well, used to get quite a few characters back in the day. I mean, we get a few now, but I feel like I always remember stories of you almost adopting people.
My dad was terrible for it. My mum and dad, I mean, I think probably Deb and I are a little bit the same, not quite as bad as them, but they had the pub with the hotels, they had loads of rooms. And we had when I was in the Prince Albert, my dad took on a young Irish barman called Des, who was only in his 20s. And he lived in a sort of digs, they used to call it, round the corner, like, sort of a house of multiple occupancy, I suppose now, with a landlady, and used to do their dinner and things. And he took him on, and he worked for us for years. And didn't only work for us for years, he worked until the day he died for us. He was part of our family, really. He became old Des. But we had him, and then we had another guy called Ronald Atkinson. And he was an ex-fireman, and he was from Cumbria. And there's a few stories about poor old Ron. He was about 6 foot, 6 foot 5. He's a big bloke. And because he'd been a fireman, he burnt his face in a fire. He'd got burnt. Not seriously disfigured, but he'd lost all the nerves in his nose and things.
Oh, I remember this story.
So he would stand and his nose would just drip. And he didn't know.
Yeah.
And you used to have to keep saying to him, Ron, nose, and he'd sort of wipe his nose. I won't tell that story because it makes me feel sick. But he was a sort of a barman, and we gave him a room to stay in because he had nowhere to stay. He turned up in the pub one day and had nowhere to stay. And my dad said, well, I'll give you a job and I'll give you a room and we'll give you your board, we'll feed you and whatever. Yeah. And he was with us until he died. And we used to sort of use him as a barman, but also as sort of odd job man because he was quite, well, I don't know if he was Andy really, but he was strong.
Yeah, he was a bloke.
So my dad's in the pub one day and he looks up at the clock, and the clock was about 4 minutes slow. And so this was in the Angerstein, so it's got 25-foot high ceilings. It's a big, big place. So my dad says to Ron, when we shut, because in those days you used to shut from 3 to 5:30 in the afternoon. So when we close, he said, can you get that clock and put it right? He said, there's nothing worse than a slow clock in the pub. Everybody argues when you're trying to get them out at 11 o'clock. It's not 11 yet, look. He said, put it on. He said, you want it about 2 or 3 minutes fast. That's an ideal pub clock, is 2 or 3 minutes fast. So Ron said, he used to say, I'll tell you one thing. Yep, I'll do that. And so I said, okay. So we closed. So we learnt afterwards, there was this big bloody crash we heard downstairs. We went downstairs. Instead of going out and getting a ladder, which is what you needed to get up to this clock, or a big pair of steps, Ron puts a table underneath the clock, and then he puts a chair on top of the table. And then he got up on top of the chair, and he's 6 foot, sort of 4 or 5. And so he's got a chair next to the table to get up onto the table, then onto the chair. Then he gets up and he gets hold of this clock, and as he gets hold of the clock and leans, the chair slid on the table and slid off. And he's grabbed hold of the clock and held his electric clock, and he pulled the clock off the wall, crashed onto the table, which broke, the legs broke on the table, landed on top of the chair, and that crumbled into about 5 bits. And he's laying on the floor. So my dad comes down, he's laying on the floor. What the hell's happened here? So Ron said, "Oh, tell you one thing, chair moved. Shouldn't have moved. I didn't think the chair was going to move." So my dad said, "You all right?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm all right." And he gets up. My dad said, "Clear this mess up, you bloody idiot." Like whatever.
Yeah.
So he clears all the mess up and takes it out in the backyard. And the backyard in the pub was a terrible place. It had all sorts of junk out there waiting to get rid of. And he takes it out there and he comes back in and we heard this sort of clump, clump, clump. And Ron comes through the door and gives my dad a pair of pliers and said, "Can you pull that nail out of that plank out my foot?" He trod on a nail that was sticking up through a plank. And it was sticking right through his foot, and we pulled it out.
Jesus.
And my mum come down and put some disinfectant on it, put something around it, and that was it.
Bit of Dettol.
Yeah, it was really funny. So my old man said, "You bloody idiot, get upstairs, like go and have some time, have the night off," sort of thing. So the next morning, Ron decides he's going to put his clock back because it's like he's got the clock off. So he gets up and he puts his clock back up on the wall, and he done it this time.
Yeah.
He actually got a ladder and he done it properly. And put the clock back on the wall. So we're all sitting there at 5:30, we opened up, and there was a bloke called Peter who used to come in at 5:30 every night and have a couple of pints. And Peter used to come in, he'd sit there reading his newspaper, and you couldn't talk to him till he read his newspaper. It was the Evening Standard they used to have in London. And he couldn't read, he wouldn't say a word till he read it. And then he'd put the paper down, and then he'd want to chat. So we're sitting there chatting. And he turned around, he looked at his clock, and he went to my dad, "Am I completely plastered here, or is that clock going backwards?" It's an electric clock. So he crossed the wires over. He put the neutral in the live in the neutral, and it made the clock run backwards.
That works quite well.
Yeah, he was a character.
Yeah.
We had him. We had another guy called Bosun. Come in the pub one day. He's a little tiny man, Bosun, and he came in the pub one day. We used to see him about every 4 or 5 months. He was literally was a bosun on ships, on cargo ships and things. And he came in and he was in absolute tears, sitting there. And my dad said, "What's the matter, bosun? You all right, mate?" And he said, "No." He said, "My mum's died." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." He said, "I was adopted as a child." He said, "And my dad died like 3 or 4 years ago, and my mum's just died. And my brothers and sisters have just said, 'You're not one of us,' and kicked him out the house. And said, 'We're selling the house, and you're not entitled to anything because you're not a real, you're not one of the children.'" And he'd grown up with these kids, so he was devastated, in terrible state. And my dad said, "Well, I've got somewhere you can stay for a bit while you're looking for somewhere." We had Bosun for 20 years, I think. And he was there, and he used to be the potman, go around picking up the glasses. And believe it or not, you did need someone in those days in the pub doing that. And he used to get up in the morning and clean the toilets and do all that sort of stuff. And that was for his keep, basically. And we had him for 20 years. So, yeah, we had these people sort of all around us all the time, all these different people. Old Des, the old Irish barman I told you about, he was a highly intelligent guy, really, really clever. And he was like a sponge. He used to just take knowledge and that in. He used to read everything. And I used to ask him, if I wanted to know anything as a kid, I'd ask Des. And Des would know the answer.
He was Google.
Yeah, he was. He was Google at the time for me. Except he used to, sometimes he'd have a laugh with me. There's a drink called Benedictine. It's made by Benedictine monks. Well, it was. I don't know if it still is. And it was just a liqueur that you had on the back cabinet in the pubs in those days. And it had a wax seal on the front of the bottle with a stamp in it. And the stamp was DOM, just D.O.M. And I said, "Des," one night I'm standing there looking at this bottle, and I said, "Des, what does that mean? Do you have any idea what DOM is?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "It means dirty old monk."
That's good.
He was quite a character.
I think we're running over an hour almost. So
We are.
You've got to edit that down then.
no, we can leave it in. It's fine. We can have a longer episode, but we'll wrap up. I've got a couple. You didn't take cards back in the day, I assume. That wasn't really a thing.
No.
Did you take cheque?
Yeah, it was check cards. You used to have check guarantee cards.
Okay. So you did check, and it was cash, I suppose. Didn't have the modern tills. Didn't have any of that.
No, just the till that you rung into. And you had to add up in your head And when I first started, my dad first taught me to do that. I was still at school. We had pounds, shillings, and pence, and that was bloody complicated. You had 12 pennies to a shilling and 20 shillings to a pound. So when you was adding up, you had to remember when you got to 20 shillings in your head, it went to another pound.
Yeah.
It was ever so easy to drop a pound when there's a big round.
Yeah.
You go, I mean, but I'm talking like the beer was 20 pence a pint.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it wasn't. In 20 pence was 4 shillings.
Yeah.
So, it was like.
But it was, what would you say in today's pubs or in modern day, the worst rule or the worst changes since compared
that's
to
a good
old
place to wrap
pubs?
up. If you could change one thing back, is a better way to put it, to take the pub as it is now today, one change that would bring it more similar to some of the stories you've been telling today.
I think I'd like to get the youngsters to realise the benefit of the pub and to come in and to create that community that we used to have. I don't have to sing songs around the piano, but they need to just be more cohesive and come in more and not be so isolated. I mean, you see people even now, and I'm just as bad at it, everybody is, but sitting at the bar with their telephone and scrolling through things on their phone. And they need to be chatting.
Yeah.
We've got if you look at us, we've got a particular customer who might be listening, so we won't say too much, but I mean, came in, I remember him coming in, he's a single bloke, on his own, elderly, and he used to come in and he'd have a pint and sit there quietly doing that and go. And gradually we engaged him in conversation, we got him talking, and now the guy comes in nearly every day, has 3 or 4 pints, and is friends with loads of people and he knows loads of people, and it's completely transformed his life.
Yeah.
This pub being open has transformed his life. He's not a lonely person, doesn't know anybody, doesn't see anybody. He's out and there's people that talk to him. And when he was ill, some of the young lads went to make sure he was all right, and that's what pubs are about.
Yeah.
If we could just get that back in.
We're very lucky because we have got more of that community. A lot of the youngsters come out and they will engage with each other and they'll play darts and they'll play pool, and we have got quite a good younger base of customers. But I think especially down south, I mean, talking to my friends who are still down in sort of Kent and Sussex, they don't go to pubs anymore because they're expensive. They have stupid opening times, but also they're just not that many people go down the pub anymore. And I think it's in a way, we'll touch bases on it next time we come on the show, but there's a lot of pubs changing from pubs to micro pubs and going into shops and kind of little bars opening up, and it's almost going European. Like when I go to Finland, there's pubs, and a pub is somewhere that you get alcoholics. People don't go to socialise, they go to coffee shops generally, and the coffee shops are open till 10 o'clock at night. And I think we're almost heading that way, especially with people drinking less alcohol, which is a way I think pubs need to adapt, and they need to offer alcohol-free and coffees and teas and kind of different drinks that people want to drink that's not alcohol.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know how you encourage. I mean, you want the youngsters. Pubs will only survive if the customers support the pubs. So we need the customers to come out slightly more often. They don't have to drink alcohol, and especially here, we're in the middle of nowhere. A lot of them have to drive. So you don't have to drink alcohol. We've got loads of quite good alcohol-free beers. And you drink like we're drinking Coke.
Yeah.
You can sit in the pub and play pool, play darts, have a good laugh with everybody and a chat and drink Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be alcohol.
No.
It's nice to have a beer. It's come out on a Friday night and have a few and make a designated driver and you all have a drink. But you don't have to.
No.
But I don't know. I'd like the youngsters to feel how I used to feel going to the pub and what the pub was like. And I'd like them to experience that, because unless they experience that, it will disappear and they'll never get a chance to experience it. So I think we need to encourage them to come to the pub slightly more often. They don't have to spend a fortune. As I say, get a pint of Coke, it's £3 something, and it's not a lot of money nowadays. and sit for an hour or two with the same Coke. We're not going to charge them. We're not going to get off the pool table. We'll let them come in and have their Coke.
Yeah.
But they will socialise and they will talk to one another, and the atmosphere grows from that. The one thing I love about this pub in particular is the atmosphere.
Yeah.
You come in here and it's always a nice... I mean, when it's dead quiet, sometimes it's not so much, but generally speaking, if there's more than 6 or 7 people in here, there's a really nice atmosphere.
No, we've got a nice shaped bar that it kind of works.
Yeah.
But, well, that's been a good first guest episode. We're going to get you back on at some point, I'm sure.
I've got an awful lot more to tell you.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was sort of going, obviously, I haven't barely scratched the surface here. So if you've got any questions that you want to ask Paul, send us an email, driptradediaries@gmail.com, or you can message us on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. Just let us know your thoughts. Anything you want to hear, let us know. And join us next week for our second guest, which is Brooke, who is
Brian,
who is also known as Brian. I think now only in one episode.
Yeah.
We redid the first episode.
So she's not Brian, she is just Brooke. Yeah.
Well, Gracie called her Brian once last week.
But yeah,
which didn't make sense then. So yeah, we'll see you for that. And thanks for listening and catch you next week.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.